What is good, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video, and in this one I want to break down what's going on with Tesla, SPY, Nvidia, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. I'm going to break down what's happening with the overall market thus far, what you should be watching for as time progresses, some new earnings that just came out, and how the market is looking in my personal opinion. But before I break into doubles information, before I get into any more details, let me just mention a couple of things. I am personally not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Weeble link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Weeble and deposit $500, you're guaranteed 20 free stocks. If you deposit $25,000 or more, you're guaranteed 75 of them. And the offer ends very soon in just 6 days. Anyways, looking at SPY, we had this uptrend that has been established for the last couple of days. And during the after hours day, we saw SPY finally break this. This is actually a big sign of weakness as we have a gap to fill below. Not to mention the fact that the market is starting to contract a bit with Meta not doing the best for earnings. So Meta is one reason why. There's also a bunch of different other factors, from the way the dollar is performing to the way algorithms are adjusting. So I'm going to be breaking down a lot of those details a little bit later into this video. I first want to talk about some data and break down some very important things. So for tomorrow, it's going to be Thursday, April 25th, 2024. An hour before the market opens, we have the GDP growth rate data coming out, GDP numbers, and initial jobless claims, which will be very important for the markets. We'll see what this causes moving forward. Then after all of this, we have the 4-week and 8-week bill auctions coming out at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we'll see what this causes for the market moving forward. But once again, guys, don't forget that the majority of the data that's very important for the markets comes out tomorrow before the market opens, and we'll see what this causes for us moving forward. Now, for earnings, I just want to call out that we just got Meta, IBM, and Ford announcing their earnings. Meta and IBM both ended up dropping pretty hard. Ford is still up just slightly. And besides that, for tomorrow, we have Royal Caribbean Group, not to mention Microsoft, Alphabet, and Intel. So we have more big tech earnings coming out tomorrow. But for right now, we're just going to focus on Meta, IBM, and Ford. All right. So for Meta, shares are crashing right now. They're down 16% as of right now. Let me just reload this just to double check. So just to be safe, I want to make this as up to date as possible. So right now we're down about, it says it right over here. We're down like 16% still. So that's pretty much a big drop on Meta. They're down 16% on weak revenue guidance, even as the first quarter results topped estimates. And that's some big news. So what happened was EPS was at $4.71 above expectations. Revenue is at 36.46 billion above expectations. Not bad for them. And then when it comes to other things, the revenue increased by about 27% from 28 billion during the same period last year, year over year. And we saw some nice growth. We saw a nice pop in net income as well, as we started to see costs decrease by 16%. And the only issue, what really caused this big sell-off, is because of the fact that Mark Zuckerberg came out and he named the fact that there's a very, very mixed reality, and the fact that despite the fact that their investments in AI are increasing, there are some difficulties coming ahead. They're expecting sales in the second quarter to be about 36.5 to 39 billion. That's about a little bit under 38 billion on the midpoint. That's representing 18% year over year growth, but that is well below the analyst expectations of over 38.3 billion. So that's the reason why we saw this massive, massive sell off. So, because of the fact that there are some difficulties for this, at least for the next projected quarter, and also seeing the fact that the headcount declined by about 10%, this is very, very important, and we're starting to see more contractions that are developing. And with weak guidance, that kind of trumps all of this, because now we're expecting things to not be as strong as what these very, very strict analysts were expecting. Analysts tend to be very, very strict on the Magnificent Seven, especially on Meta. They tend to expect very, very good growth and very, very high things. And because we didn't really get it for the projection for the second quarter, the share prices are plunging. For IBM, it's also going to be acquiring HashiCorp in a $6.4 billion deal. You guys can see this right over here. They're also committed to deploying more AI assistants to its 160,000 consultants during this quarter. But despite that, the shares are down 6% after they ended up saying that they would acquire cloud software maker HashiCorp, and they reported their first quarter revenue that was lower than what we expected, not the best for analysts. So it intends to pay $35 per share in cash for the deal on Tuesday, and a lot of investors didn't really like this. If anything, this caused their shares to go up, and not the best for IBM. And if anything, this is going to actually give us more information about what's going to come out later on. What's not so good about this is the fact that with their revenue and other things coming out, their revenue is actually a little bit short on expectations. They only got about 14.46 billion, a little bit short of the 14.55 billion expectation. EPS was a beat at $1.68. So that was pretty good, but the revenue coming in weak was not the best of news for them. And simultaneously, we also saw their consulting revenue come in at 5.19 billion, a little bit down from what we saw before. And because they ended up missing on revenue, and because of the facts that investors had a little bit more of a negative response after their new acquisition, the share price is down quite a bit so far. We're currently down about 8% and counting. So we're continuing to fall despite the fact that HashiCorp is up. So it is what it is, guys. Investors have this different view. For Ford, I'm going to be very quick with this. They topped first quarter estimates and they're trying to offset the EV losses. So far, their EPS was about 49 cents, which is above expectations. The revenue was at about $39.89 billion above, a little bit below, the expectations of 40.1 billion. And their overall revenue for the first quarter ended up increasing by about 3%. Net income was about $1.33 billion. So not too bad, but their EV sector is not the strongest. As they're seeing a loss between $5 and $5.5 billion. So that is how things are going. So with that being said, overall, their full year guidance was in line with expectations. Decent guidance, not the I would say okay earnings, kind of like mixed, but because their guidance was decent and they're trying to offset some losses, the share prices of Ford are up. Now, the fear and greed index is currently at fear right now. We're getting closer to neutral, but I'd be very careful because once again, the market's still shifting. And we're starting to see the puts and call positioning dropped quite a bit. We started to see a lot of puts being closed, but the market may have another idea of its own. Market volatility has dropped quite a bit, but the VIX is approaching this key support very close to the 50 daily moving average. We're not too far from that, so the VIX could try to bounce very soon if we do end up approaching support. And this makes me a little bit concerned for SPY. So let's now break down these charts. What do I see for this moving forward? Honestly, guys, the answer is bearish. So I had a theory that we had this like temporary peak right here. We're going to see some downside. But then when I was recording my video, what essentially happened was we were maintaining this uptrend throughout the day and we actually held it, right? And I made one more video about that and I told you to watch and see if we lose the support, we would turn back to bearish. If we held it, we could have tried to bounce. And I told you just watch it just to be safe. And what happened is after the market closed, we got new metrics that show that the market's going to dip. And then on top of that, Meta started sinking really hard. So that was used as a reason alongside the algorithms shifting to this very important zone. So we have this unfilled gap all the way down at this 499 area. So, excuse me, we have unfinished business there, and we're starting to see the market returning to that phase. If you look at the daily charts on SPY, what I'll notice is that this gap still exists over here. We could actually come all the way down to this important liquidity zone. I think 499 is likely coming. So I expect that for tomorrow. I think that's we could kind of rebound a little bit, get a back test of the trend line. We could retest 504, then start sinking down to 499, and that's my target for tomorrow. I think that this is a rejection that's forming off our 200 EMA, and there's weakness on the chart from here. So that's what I'm expecting so far. On the QQQ, I'm seeing the same thing essentially. We were trying to respect this uptrend throughout the entire day. And you guys can see right here was trying to hold this trend line. And then after we closed, that's when we actually broke it. So I would say that they're using Meta as one reason to drop things. And then simultaneously, there's that very important liquidity zone in this 419 area. If we lose that, we have this other gap all the way down in this like 418 zone. So I do see a potential dip coming. It's at 420 to 418 area for the QQQ. Might rebound a bit, retest 423, then start coming all the way back down. That's a strong possibility for this rejection. And this is looking a bit more bearish in my personal opinion. On top of this, when it comes to Tesla, Tesla's in a very, very interesting phase right now. I could sort of draw this out as a diamond pattern, but let me just say, don't worry too much about the diamond. Just focus on the levels. So Tesla was stuck between 160 and 162 for almost the entire day. And then if we lose support at 158, we're going to be expecting even more downside all the way down towards the 155 area. For resistance, we have 165. In my personal opinion, there could be another pop coming to Tesla before a potential rejection, and there is a risk of it dipping a bit to 158. If we lose that, it's going to dip even more. I do see a risk of that, especially because we got this liquidity grab up here. So the odds do favor some downside for Tesla and it following the market. But just to be safe, let's wait for confirmation. Let's wait and see if we actually break 158. I'm going to be waiting for that just to be safe, but there is a risk of that in my personal opinion. For Nvidia, we're looking bearish, clear rejection. I called out 8:46 in the morning saying we could reject off our 200 EMA. We ended up rejecting just a little bit under that in the 844s, so very, very close. And then we got this huge move to the downside. I think that we could rebound a bit to the 790 area, then start dipping lower towards 767. And I think there's a very good chance we could come all the way down here to complete the move down. So I do see a risk of downside on Nvidia. On top of all of this, we have Aapl. Apple's trying to rebound right over here. We're going to be approaching this resistance around this 170 area. I think that that's going to be very, very key for us. And I think that Aapl could push a little bit more, outperforming the market. But once we hit 170, I'll be very careful with this. With that being said, the market is showing some signs of contraction. The market is showing some weakness looking at what's been happening with other tickers out there. So I want to just now focus on a few other tickers before I finish this video. So let's just go to Palantir real quick. Give me 1 second, guys. I'm going to switch over to the 4-hour time frame. Palantir was trying to break out with Tesla, and we got this rejection off. We basically pushed all the way up to about 22.25 today. That's the target we had. Then we got a big rejection, and we're back down to 21. The 4 hour is looking kind of weak right now from what I'm seeing. So this suggests that we could actually come all the way back down. So it's kind of like a V-shaped move, not a V-shaped, kind of like a big pump and dump like move. So I could be looking for 21 to be tested and move all the way down to this imbalance. I think we could be retracing towards 20.5 all over again. For Supermicro is looking a little bit weak right here. So we got this bounce. I said that we could be pushing towards 800, and we'll see if this breaks or not. We did go there in the pre-market. Then we got a big rejection with Nvidia. I think we have this gap to fill all the way down to 700, so I do expect Supermicro to come down a little bit lower. So watch for a little bit more downside on the chart. For Rivian, it kind of followed Tesla all the way up towards 9.4, and since then it's been coming back down. Look for a back test of 8.9, then a continuation down. And I do expect it to go all the way down to at least 8.5 or even 8.25. So I expect some downside as a very, very strong possibility. For SoFi, it's not looking that great. It was attempting to rebound a bit, but now it's struggling at our 200 EMA. Going to be looking for a move all the way down to 7.36, and we could even break below that. So I expect some downside. For the IWM, Russell 2000, I think that there's a very good chance that this is kind of contracting just a little bit. And I think that the Russell is kind of struggling at our 50 EMA. Could retest 199 to 200 one more time before it continues lower. But I think that we're going to be looking for a test of 196. Even though this still has an uptrend, I'm seeing some signs of weakness because it's really struggling at this 50 EMA. So this could kind of pop and drop again. And we're going to be looking for a move back down towards the 196 area. For AMD, I'm seeing some weakness on the 4-hour time frame. There's a downtrend right over here. I think that what's going to happen to AMD is this might continue lower. So we got this liquidity grab up here. And we're going to continue to fill this imbalance. I think 148 is likely going to come. So I expect that to happen very soon. For ARM, we got this nice little push to the upside, hitting 104. And then we could reject here and start sinking all the way down towards. I basically see this essentially coming back down for a retest of this previous previous resistance around. I'm trying to look at the 93 area, and I think it might break this and start sinking back down towards 87 all over again. So this is back to bearish. I also want to note that we may have just witnessed a dead cat bounce, so not like a true reversal. And we have this imbalance all the way down towards 80, so that could be another target later on if we lose 87. So that's something worth noting on ARM. For Coinbase to me is looking a little bit weak. So we tried to break out today. We tried to hold. And I told you if we held above this trend line, I would turn bullish. If we ended up failing and came back below it, I would turn bearish. And what happened, we ended up coming back below it. So we have support at 221. Could retest 226 and then reject and start sinking down to fill this gap. I think we're going to fill this gap and come all the way down to 210 very soon. So I expect some downside on Coinbase. Amazon's looking kind of weak as it kind of sync with Meta. Amazon's also showing signs of contraction. So I'm going to be looking for a retest of 173.7, then a continuation lower. And if we lose the support, we have a gap to fill all the way down to 170. So I think Amazon's going to sink down to 170, and I'm anticipating some more downside. For Meta has come crashing down. We're currently at 412 earnings. Once again, we had decent earnings, but the issue was our guidance was not very good. So from what I'm seeing, I'm looking at this level right here, this 404 to 405 area. If we lose that, our next target is going to be all the way down to 395, followed by 387. So that's quite a bit of downside. So it's looking very weak, guys. Be very careful with the stock, down 16%. Be careful when we open. There could be more downside coming. Unfortunately, Meta is very weak and tends to make big moves after earnings. Investors love to trade it. For Microsoft, we rejected off our 50 and 200 EMA right over here, this resistance. I said it might push towards this and we'll see if it rejects or not. And we got the rejection. So I see this coming down to 395. Looks kind of weak to me. For Google, I see downside potential because we hit this resistance right here. I called a potential push to 160. We got there and then we rejected, right? That was the key resistance we called out. So now we lost the 50 EMA. This is going to likely sink all the way down to at least 153.9, like 154-ish. And then if we lose that, we're coming all the way down towards the 152. So I see some downside potential. For the VIX, I noticed that the VIX, to me, is looking like it's trying to turn. I think that if the VIX bounces very close to this 15.5 area, this imbalance over here, this is previous support becoming resistance. It's either going to bounce off 15.25 or 15.5, and then we're going to be looking for a move back up towards 16.78. I think the VIX is going to bounce. I think that this is going to be because of the market dipping a bit. And then finally, we have the 10-year Treasury yield. I think that this could dip down to fill this gap and also the second gap over here. This might happen soon, so that's something worth noting. That could be because of the market potentially dipping a bit. And the dollar, it's actually up a little bit. We're at resistance, so we'll see if the dollar breaks past 105.9, starts pushing to fill this imbalance at 106.12, or if this thing ends up rejecting, coming back down. It is showing some life that it wants to bounce, but there's no confirmation yet, so I have to wait a bit just to see. With that being said, guys, the market is showing weakness. Meta is looking weak, and there is a risk for Tesla as well to come back down if we lose some key support. So I want to make it very, very clear that the market's in a very, very critical place. The market has risks coming up, and tomorrow there is a risk of downside coming, in my personal opinion, for SPY and the QQQ looking at the current charts. So watch and see if we get a little back test and then more downside. Be very, very mindful of that. And with that being said, I just want to say I really appreciate every single one of you so much. So please have a great day, guys. Take care of your health. Do what's best for your own lives. And I'll see you guys very soon tomorrow during the next update video. Thank you for listening. Market to the moon, because the long term is still very bright despite the short term downside we may be seeing. And just know that I'll be back tomorrow before the market opens to report what happens with initial jobless claims and also with the GDP numbers. All right, so get ready for some volatility, and I'll see you guys very soon. Thanks again, and peace out.